everyone. It's great to be here with all of you today. And I know a lot of people out there mingling across the booth, so if you want to step right in, we clearly have a few seats available. Let me ask you a very important question. How many of you consider yourself storage experts? All right, then. How many of you consider yourself cloud experts? So what's cool about this is we're going to talk about what we can do with IBM storage running on AWS. Now, we all recognize that digital transformation is happening, and it's happening at an exponential rate. We realize that data is growing 10 times. Between 2016 and 2025, the amount of data is going to grow 10x. But what's really cool now is about the ability that we now have to find untapped potential in this data. Data that historically you filed away for best practice for the future, or you filed away because some regulatory industry required you to do so. What this really tells you is that now you can go get that data, and you can harness the power of that data and find new use cases coming out of it. For those thinking about public cloud deployments in the past, what they quickly figured out is, okay, that was good for maybe born on the cloud accounts. For those of us in regulated or highly enterprise accounts, public cloud seemed daunting for the early years. But things are evolving. Things are changing. And now we know that 73% of enterprise customers believe that the public cloud is where they can find very specific use cases to store their data. And better yet, it's all about hybrid cloud, which is many of you have your data on-prem today. You recognize that there are private cloud data centers out there, and certainly what you have with public cloud as well. But it's really bridging all of those that really define the value of the hybrid value proposition. Now, what IBM is doing with storage is giving you choice and flexibility. This allows for some 4 key use cases that I want to touch on today. First is business continuity. We all recognize that we've got to have an ability to have DR capabilities, disaster recovery. How do you recover your data if there's a loss? And that is where a public cloud can come in. DevOps and analytics use cases. You know, that situation where suddenly you have to have additional data available, or a workload is growing like crazy, and you don't have time to build a new building, get power to it, get all your storage into it, and suddenly be able to run a capability, right? You need to be able to expand on the whim very quickly, and that's where public cloud can come in. Now, we know lots of people are migrating their applications to the cloud. But last I checked, an application without the data source, kind of like a car without, electricity or gas or anything to run it. So if you don't have your data, how are you going to succeed in the cloud? And that's where migration and data mobility come in. And finally, the hybrid use case. Those of us who have data on-prem and data in the cloud, and the connective tissue that allows that to work together. So the chart you're seeing now is what we fondly call our family portrait within storage. And I want to spend a minute giving you an idea of what this means for all of you. Because what I recognize is that despite any industry that you might be in, regardless of your company size, we've got the ability to find a solution that works for you. On the very extreme end, you see storage for AI and big data. Those of you who are running high-performance computing solutions have great data lakes that you're trying to access. There are no better products out there to help you drive that IBM Spectrum Scale and our partner products, IBM Spectrum Discover and IBM Cloud Object Storage. And these can all be offered to you as software only or in an appliance form factor, which is what you see under Elastic Storage System and Cloud Object Storage. We also have storage for hybrid cloud. Spectrum Virtualized, an award-winning software that's available to allow you to virtualize your distributed storage environment. And you can do that with IBM storage as well, with our StoreWise and Flash Systems families. And all of this supported by a storage software solution running in the cloud called Storage Insights, which allows you to take telemetry data, regardless of your type of storage, and actually helps you keep that to drive analytics capabilities. And last but certainly not least, modern data protection. Look, we get it. You've got your data. It's extremely valuable to you. How are you going to protect that? And that's where modern data protection comes in with our family of offerings, including Spectrum Protect Plus. What we're excited to share with you today is that you can run all of this IBM storage software on Amazon through the AWS Marketplace. And I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about each of these with you so you can get a better sense of which product might be right for what workload that you might be interested in leveraging. So let me first start with Spectrum Scale on AWS. For those of you who don't know, Spectrum Scale is a highly available, scalable file system with a POSIX interface. And oh, by the way, runs in the top 2 supercomputers in the world. Let me repeat that. Spectrum Scale runs behind the top 2 supercomputers in the world. Now, think about that. How would you like to take that ability and now have it available at your disposal without having to be a subject matter expert in Spectrum Scale? You can now do that. You can now run that within an hour directly on AWS Marketplace. No admin skills required, and very easy to do. Now, Spectrum Scale is targeted at HPC, high-performance computing workloads, and allows you to get into that data so you can do that data mining that we all recognize is critically important. And it's extremely, extremely useful for agile deployments, things like workloads where you have POCs or you have a DevOps workload. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of those coming up next. So let's look at that first one, scaling. So this is an assumption that you already have data on the cloud, but you need to grow and expand that. How many of you have heard of Black Friday? Oh, nobody? Black Friday? Oh, it must be all cyber. It must be all Cyber Monday for you guys, right? So when you think about it, the retail industry is the perfect example of where you suddenly have ebbs and flows in your storage needs. You have these peak workloads where suddenly you have to be able to expand, and sometimes very quickly, to be able to get a hold of that data. So when you think about scaling on AWS using Spectrum Scale, that's what we allow you to do. You can start off at one set of number of server nodes, and you can expand that to a greater number of server nodes. And guess what? When you no longer need it, you can contract again. And that ability to expand and shrink is an extremely valuable capability that you can now do, running Spectrum Scale on AWS Marketplace. The second is a bursting use case. This is a hybrid use case. So let me give you an example of that in the context of a story. We were approached by some universities who were doing theoretically trying to do some joint analysis of the work that they were doing. And what happened is each university system spread out across the world had a set of data that they wanted to use to run their machine learning algorithms on. And the only way that they could do it in a collaborative manner was to somehow copy all that data. Last I checked, copying all that data across the world is not the most cost-effective thing. So what instead we were proposing is really bringing it all together, using the cloud as a way to bring together data from numerous different sources, and then analyzing the data once it's on the cloud. Now, all you have to do is return the data set, return the results post-analysis. And that's really one of the examples of how a burst to the cloud can allow you to go run a specific workload and then turn it back to on-prem if that's where your data resides. So that, my friends, is Spectrum Scale on AWS. And the exciting thing is, you can purchase through IBM, through your normal Passport Advantage, and now deploy directly on the AWS Marketplace. Remember, you don't have to have a whole lot of Spectrum Scale skills to be able to do this, and you can deploy in under an hour. So now let's move on to the next product in the family, Spectrum Protect, which is a modern data protection solution. When you look at Spectrum Protect Plus, many people use it today on-prem to back up their databases. This could be IBM DB2, Oracle, SQL Server, Mongo, doesn't matter. But you protect your data and you do it today on-prem. What we now have is the ability to also protect the same kind of data, but now do it on Amazon. These same databases running on AWS, and you can do that same data protection with Protect Plus. And what's really great about the whole thing is you can use the same consistent interface to do this. You don't have to learn something new. You've got the simplicity of having the same UI that you use on-prem and now running it on the cloud. We have VMware on cloud, where you can do modern data protection as well. And what's great about this is we support VMs, we support protecting the databases, and we support protecting the applications. So regardless of if you have VMware on-prem or VMware on AWS, we're excited to share that using IBM Spectrum Protect Plus, you can protect that data regardless of where it resides. And finally, the hybrid cloud use case. This is where you have an on-premises data center, right? You've got Spectrum Protect server running on-prem. You have a vSnap repository to allow you to pull that data. The data could be coming from tape, could be coming from Cloud Object Storage with write once, read many sort of capabilities. But regardless of what your on-prem configuration looks like, you now have the ability to tier to the cloud. And as we all know, the amount of the cost matters. So if you need to store it in the colder or in warmer, you have that choice because we can support both S3 and S3 Glacier for your data protection needs. What's great about this? One of the, again, award-winning software, but now available for you to deploy directly on AWS Marketplace in 20 minutes. I mean, that's fantastic. You can pick, with a few simple configuration parameters, you're able to make a big change to how you manage and store and protect your data. And last, and certainly not least, is IBM Spectrum Virtualize for public cloud running on AWS. So there are 4 key use cases that I want to touch on for why Virtualize is extremely important. Now, Virtualize is award-winning software that allows us to virtualize across any block storage, cloud block storage environment. And what's great here is, just like we do on-prem, the value of this is lower cost and the ability to drive greater performance for your already existing investment. We have over 450 devices that we support with Virtualize today. That's both a combination of IBM devices and non-IBM devices. And you could take that same extensive capability and create a cloud service with any of them. Now, any of these can now become expandable to a hybrid cloud environment, including, by the way, our solutions around VersaStack. And much like I said with Protect, all with the same consistent management interface. You don't have to go and learn something new. You don't have to become a new expert. Now we help you get there and get your data to the cloud. But as we touched on before, why is getting your data to the cloud so important? Well, business continuity. We know something's going to happen. How do you ensure you can recover? How do you ensure you can address an issue when there is a disaster? And with Spectrum Virtualize for public cloud, you can leverage AWS and the public cloud as your DR site. And last but not least, once your data is already in the cloud, we've got some pretty interesting opportunities to provide Airgap and other such solutions to provide that extra set of comfort around your data protection in the cloud. So let's talk about each of these in just a little bit more detail. On the left-hand side, you see here your on-prem environment, right? You've got your data connected to your block storage, your storage, whether it's through Fibre Channel, NVMe, iSCSI, doesn't matter. You already have that data connectivity. But now you can leverage Spectrum Virtualize on AWS. And what this allows you to do is, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, allow you to get that data to Spectrum Virtualize running on AWS. What's great about this is, back to what I said before, the simplicity of how you can do this. You have now the ability, using the same management interface, to be able to go from on-prem to the cloud. And what we do is we actually take Virtualize and run it on EC2 with EBS backing store behind it. The other key use case here is around creating this Airgap data protection solution. So what you can do here is take, again, your data that's currently running on-prem. You can write directly to S3. You can also write to Spectrum Virtualize running on EBS You're running on EC2 with EBS backing store. And now you have multiple access points for your data that's running in the cloud. This allows you to have that peace of mind that, again, your data is protected should something happen and you need to be able to recover it. You can always rehydrate the data back into your Spectrum Virtualize directly from that S3 backup. Again, simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. Now you can leverage IBM Spectrum Virtualize for public cloud directly through IBM Marketplace, and you can do this with deployment in 15 minutes. So let's bring this home with some customer examples. We have a partner that we work with, a managed service provider, the ATS group, that has actually taken our Spectrum Virtualize solution and built a SAS service around it. What they've recognized is, okay, in a PowerPoint chart, it all looks pretty easy. But the reality is, understanding the network, really contemplating what kind of storage you need at what capacity and when, might require some expertise that their clients may not have. So what they've done is built a SAS service written on top of using IBM's Spectrum Virtualize for public cloud, and now provides an even simpler deployment. And as you can see from Tim Conley's quote here, he recognized that they recognized that the clients needed this kind of simplicity, and that's exactly what they've provided. The simplicity of being able to run a SAS service to get their data, client data, to the cloud and do it in a way that's as easy as possible. Two key examples of that. One is a large federal customer. As you all know, lines of businesses often come in with very specific requirements, and oh, by the way, they want it done yesterday. So they have an example here of a line of business that said they really needed to be able to get the data to the cloud, and as you can imagine, being a federal customer, it needed to run on the government cloud. And so using the solution built by ATS, they were able to help this commerce customer get their solution running on AWS on their government cloud in a much more efficient manner, allowing them to, again, drive to productivity and meet the demands of that line of business. And then finally, a SaaS example. So Galileo is a SaaS solution built by the ATS group, and they had a similar situation where in order to go port this and migrate this to the cloud was going to require a whole lot of development work on their end. But now, using the solution that provided by Spectrum Virtualize for public cloud, they could do this much easier. They can now get this to the cloud much faster. And not only that, they can continue to run their data on-prem on the V7000, which is a Spectrum Virtualize-based device. And then using Flash Copy, get that data at a specified interval, could be weeks or every month, whatever they need, and they can do that consistently. So imagine what used to take months of development to go execute, they now have at their fingertips. What did we say? Less than 20 minutes of deployment. So with that, I want to wrap up. I touched on 3 key product areas that I want you to walk away from. One is Spectrum Scale, the file system that runs 2 of the world's largest supercomputers, now available for any of you to go use, and for you to do even at the smallest scale that you need. You can run that directly from the AWS Marketplace. We all know you need to protect your data, and you can do that with IBM's modern data protection solutions and IBM Spectrum Protect Plus. So check that out as well, because it's also available for you on Marketplace. And last but not least, Spectrum Virtualize, as I mentioned, runs 450 heterogeneous kind of devices. You have the ability to expand that to a hybrid cloud use case with any of the devices in a very 20 minutes or less. So try it out. We're excited about the opportunities we have in partnership with Amazon. And please, if you have any questions, turn around 2 booths away. We're right there to booth 616 and happy to talk with you more about any of your storage needs. Thanks so much. Hope you have a great rest of the show.